You've probably noticed something pretty wild if you've been using AI tools lately. They have gotten shockingly good. Not just at spitting out facts, but at actually reasoning through complicated problems. I mean, it really feels like one day they were just fancy calculators, and the next, they were these thoughtful problem solvers. So, what on earth happened?
That really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How did we see this huge leap in what AIs can do seemingly overnight? You might think it was some massive new supercomputer or a totally new kind of AI, but nope. The answer is, well, it's a lot simpler and honestly, way more clever. It's a technique based on something you definitely learned back in elementary school.
So, before we can really appreciate the genius of the solution, we have to understand just how big the problem was. For a long, long time, even the most powerful language models would just fall flat on their face when you gave them a problem that needed more than one step to solve. Like a classic math word problem. And this, right here, perfectly illustrates that gap. Before, you'd ask an AI a complex question, and it would just try to leap straight to the final answer. It was a total black box. And more often than not, that leap would land it in the wrong place entirely, because it was missing the process.
So how did they fix it? How did researchers bridge that reasoning gap? Well, they taught the AI the exact same thing your third-grade math teacher probably told you 100 times. You have to show your work. Seriously, that simple idea, show your work, turned out to be the key that unlocked these incredible reasoning skills that were apparently hiding inside these models all along.
And I'm not just using a cute analogy here. This is a very specific technique that was laid out in this game-changing 2022 paper from a team of Google researchers. They called it chain of thought prompting, and believe me, it completely flipped the script on what we thought AI was capable of.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What exactly is this technique, and how in the world does just changing a prompt suddenly elicit reasoning from a machine? The name really says it all. Instead of just asking for the final answer, you prompt the AI to generate a chain of thought, a whole series of logical, intermediate steps that lead up to the final conclusion. Now think about that for a second. You're not rewriting the AI's code, you're not retraining it, you're simply changing how you ask the question. And the method itself is just beautiful in its simplicity. Here's how it works. First, you give the AI just a handful of examples. In those examples, you don't just write the question in the answer. No, you write out the entire step-by-step thinking process. Then you give the AI a totally new problem. And what does it do? It follows the pattern. It mimics the process you just showed it. It basically learns to think out loud. And this visual just makes it crystal clear. Look at the left. Standard prompting is just a blind jump from the question to the answer. But look at the right. Chain of thought prompting builds a bridge of logic step by step. Each step builds on the last one, which makes it so much more likely that the final answer is going to be the right one. It creates a pathway instead of forcing a leap of faith. Okay, so the theory sounds really neat and elegant, but does it actually work, like in the real world? Well, the researchers put it to the test, and the results were, let's just say they were pretty jaw-dropping. You have to understand, academics are usually pretty understated in their papers, so when the authors themselves use a word like striking to describe their own results, that's the academic equivalent of shouting from the rooftops. It means they knew they had found something really, really big. So yeah, just how striking are we talking about here? First, and this is super important, this trick only seems to work on absolutely massive models, like the 540 billion parameter model they tested. You can think of parameters as sort of like neurons in the AI's brain. And what they found was that this reasoning ability wasn't something you could teach a smaller model. It just sort of emerges when a model gets big enough. It's a property of scale. And here is the punchline. This chart shows you how well the models did on a set of really tough math word problems. And look at this. By just showing a huge model 8 examples of how to show its work, it absolutely crushed a version of GPT-3 that had been specifically and expensively trained for this exact kind of math. Let that sink in for a second. A simple prompting trick beat a costly, complicated, specialized training process. That is striking. So this discovery wasn't just some small improvement. It fundamentally changed how we interact with these AI models. It was a complete paradigm shift. And it was hiding in plain sight, inside a simple little prompting technique. So let's tie this all together. What are the big takeaways? First, a simple prompt just the way you ask can unlock these incredible complex reasoning abilities that were just lying dormant.
Second, because the AI shows its work, we suddenly have a window into its thinking. It's not a black box anymore, it's transparent. Third, this isn't something you can force. It's an emergent ability that just shows up when models get massive enough. And finally, and maybe most importantly for us, this little trick is a huge part of why the AI tools we use every day now feel so powerful and so capable. And all of this leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending question. When we teach a machine to just mimic the steps of human logic, and then it solves a problem it couldn't solve before, is it just a really clever parrot? Or is it something more? If an AI explains its reasoning, is it actually reasoning? That is something to think about.